back up a little bit and talk about what is a draft, because I keep saying draft, draft, draft. I've written 3 drafts of riff. I don't want you to think that I proofread it a few times, moved some scenes around, and called that draft 2. What I'm talking about with drafts is mostly rewriting. From draft 1 to 3, there's probably half a dozen scenes left. Most of it has been scrapped and rewritten over and over, and that's completely normal. There's this idea that there's this sacred thing. If you write it, it's powerful. This is my self-expression. This is myself. That's not really true unless it's your diary. If you're writing if you're writing something for someone else to read, it's not just your self-expression. It's communication. And think about how many times you've heard someone misinterpret something that you've said. We don't always get communication right on the first try, or the second try, or the 5th try. So, let's go back to step 3. Revision. There's a whole lot, as you can see on here, there's a whole lot of things in the sidebar. I'm not going to talk about all those, but to summarize them, I would say the biggest things that I learned are not things that I've never heard before, although I did learn some of that. But they're things that I have heard before that I've known for a long time, and I thought I understood them, like character goals and scene structure. I thought that if I had good characters and good plot, that things like character goals and scene structure would just fall into place. Because there are things that happen naturally in writing. But I sort of took that for granted and just assumed that everything else would fall into place. So when I got my manuscript back, I realized that I have to work on some of these things. So my biggest piece of advice is to look at what you think you know and assess whether or not you're actually using them in your writing. Look at everything consciously. And I'm not saying stifle your creativity and look at everything like it's like a math problem or something like that. When you write your first draft, don't look at any of these things and turn off the editor in your head and just let that first draft come out however it will come out. But for revision, I'm talking about, then you want to start incorporating some of these things. Like you might want to do a pass just on point of view. Point of view is something that, you learn it when you're a kid, and I thought I had a pretty good grasp. Oh, first person, third person, I understand that. And later you learn, oh, there's third person limited and third person omniscient, and it seems pretty easy. But I get my manuscript back and find out that even though I'm doing third person limited, I'm tending to slip into this omniscient, authorial voice, in and out, distancing myself from the character sometimes when I don't mean to be. So I would just say look at everything consciously when you revise. 4th step is publishing. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about publishing because there are a lot of sources out there for you to look at. But if anyone has questions about publishing, I can answer them to the best of my ability. I don't pretend to be an authority on it. I have not published a book. Obviously, I just got my manuscript back less than a month ago from the editor. But like I said, I did intern at a publishing house. I've gone to conferences, lectures, so I can try to answer your questions about that. But if you also have questions about non-revision aspects of writing, like pre-writing, things like that, I can try to answer those questions. If you see something up here that's intriguing that you want to know, I can answer those. How to find an editor, different types of publishing, the digital world, some are good, some are bad in my opinion. So I guess I'll open it up to questions, and I want to know what you guys want to know.
What was your, could you tell us a couple of things, you don't have to go on at length, specific kinds of things that happened in your relationship with your editor?
Specific things?
Yeah.
Like what
kinds of things did you all do?
Oh, okay.
What
Like
particular
the process
kind of
of
thing? Yeah, the
that?
process.
Sure. Okay, well, to find her, I just pretty much Googled fiction editor. It was pretty simple like that, because a lot of editors are specific to, they'll say they'll edit fiction, but really they are more into resumes and things like that. So I wanted someone who's good at fiction. I found her, and the website looked pretty legit. Once we did all the contract stuff, email back and forth, she asked for the first chapter, basically. And so I sent the first chapter, and she looked at it, and then from that point she can decide to not edit the rest of it if it's not something that she feels comfortable with editing, or something that isn't quite to the stage where it's ready for a professional. So she gave me a big several-page letter about that and some line editing on the first chapter, and then said I would be willing to work with you on the rest of your novel. So at that point, I sent her the rest of it, and it took a couple weeks. It was pretty fast because she schedules maybe like 1 or 2 days to just work on that piece. And then before she gave me that, we had a shop talk phone call where she talked to me on the phone for about 15 minutes. I could ask whatever I wanted to, lead the conversation. So we did that. And then I got the rest of the manuscript back. I got about a 12-page letter just describing all the strengths and weaknesses in there, and then as well as some line editing. I did a substantive edit, so it wasn't a whole lot of line editing like grammar and stuff. It was more holistic, but there were comments along the sides. It's all like digital editing, as well as the 12-page letter. And then as part of the deal, you also get an additional 2 hours of phone calls. So I've done half an hour so far. I've still got an hour and a half left that I can do for that. And that's pretty much the process.
What kinds of things did she sort of work with? What categories of things in your fiction? Character, narration?
Yep. Point of view was a big one. 'Cause, I mean, it was specific to things that I was were my weaknesses, but point of view was one that she talked about. There was also structure, both story structure she talked about and scene structure were two big ones, because my story is more complex, has interweaving plot lines, so we talked a lot about that. Yeah.
Find it helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
What was the hardest thing you had to kill?
Ooh, good question. I haven't written fourth draft, but I think that's a good question, because I think my biggest problem is that because I've got these multiple storylines, I've actually got 4 protagonists, which apparently you're not supposed to do. So she recommends having one protagonist because it's the protagonist's character goal that should drive the story, and if you've got 4 goals, it makes the story unfocused. So I think the biggest thing that I'm going to have to change is going to be kind of putting the other characters in the background and just focusing in on one character.
What have you found that has been most important, plot development or actual writing style?
That's a good one. I think, well, for me, at least like when I read, I look more at writing style. That's what intrigues me more, so I guess that's what I focus on in my writing. I mean, they're both obviously important. I think my biggest issue as far as my weaknesses is more of the plot development stuff. Style wasn't really so much weakness unless you put point of